welcome. My name is Ted Wong. I'm from StarKist, so customer of Board. Not a potential, but actually a customer. I'm going to bring it home. I know I'm the last one between you and the door, so I only have about 15 minutes of stuff, and then we'll have some Q&A if you have questions. But everything you've heard today, hopefully this will bring it all together and show you really how it works for supply chain. So, Director of Trade Marketing, so I do fall under finance, but at StarKist, it's really sales operations. So I have the demand planning function. And it is really S&OP, sales and operations planning. So a little bit about StarKist. You know, we're obviously the tuna company. We're best known for our pouches, which came out about 20 years ago. You can buy tuna in multiple flavors. From an operations and complexity standpoint, we're about $1 billion. We have 3 plants around the world. We have 5 DCs in the US, and we have what we think is a long supply chain, but you probably don't. It's about a 12-week supply chain, so we're trying to plan out and forecast 3 months in advance. Okay? So what was demand planning like when we started our journey? So like most of you, we were just all spreadsheets. The difficult thing was sales had spreadsheets, so demand planning had spreadsheets, and the supply chain had separate spreadsheets, and the two didn't talk to each other. So that was our issue, is that we never had what we're calling one single source of truth. So sales would go off and do their thing. We'd do a consensus planning, just like you guys, we've talked about. We do that every week 4. Week 1, we turn around and give that to the supply chain guys, and they would do the pack plan. And in between, you lost all the connectivity data because they didn't have any access to what we're doing. And then, just like that, in week 1, we would do the pack plan, and in week 2, the procurement guys would get in, and they also had no idea of what the data was, so they would do all the procurement ordering based on the pack plan. So all of this does tie together. What we were looking for is something that would tie it all together and be a little bit more sophisticated, as they said. So what did we change? With Board, we wanted a web-based system that it would do the heavy lifting for us. It had to do all the calculations, right? We wanted one single source of truth that both sales and supply chain would use together. They would all have access to all the data. So if customer A increased their forecast by 20%, and that flows through to all the distribution centers, you could tell who had increased their forecast. The supply chain people wouldn't have to come to sales and ask. They could see it and research it in the system themselves. So that was the idea behind Board. We actually have, so we're, I don't know exactly, but we're probably a pretty small user. We have about 120 users, about less than 20 on the supply chain side, and then on the sales and demand planning side, we have about 100 users. Not all of them are employees. So a lot of them are brokers that we use, so a third-party company. So we had to have a system that they could get into as well, right? So we wanted it to be easily accessible through the web because not all of them have access to our systems. So it has to be web-based. You can get on from any computer. It could be used by third parties, so we needed some security as well. We only wanted you to see your data. So all of these things were part of the solution that Board brought to us. So what did we find? How did we find out about Board? We did a POC, just like most of you are going to do if you're a potential customer. We had 2 POCs. We selected Board really for the flexibility of options, the timing, how long it was going to take to implement, and the price or the value of the equation of what we were getting for what we paid for. So what's it like now? So we have a stable platform. We've been live for a little over 3 years now. We are really just S&OP. We're not yet to IBP in terms of having the financial part tied in. So we do our sales demand planning, and we do the supply chain or the pack plan in Board. But that's as far as we've gotten. So we'd like to go further, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. So we have multiple feeds of data. We're an SAP shop. What can we do that we couldn't do before? So now forecasting used to take 2 whole days to roll up because you had a whole bunch of spreadsheets. It would take two whole days. Now it takes about 30 minutes to roll everything up. And we spend that extra time validating the data, checking the data, understanding what's driving our forecasts, looking at new products. Those are the things that we never had time to do before. It was, here's your forecast, and you dump it onto the next part of the process. Now, we actually have a consensus, what you would call a consensus forecast. We get in the room with sales, with the supply chain team, and we all talk about it, and we have time to do that because of what Board does for us. There's a special person in the room called Taylor. She created what we call multiple planning scenarios. It's basically, look, when you have an Excel file, and if you want to create a new scenario, you just say File, Save As, and you call it version 2. That's what we wanted. It sounds really simple, but that's what we wanted, and Board was able to do that for us. They created multiple planning scenarios, because sometimes you're thinking, hey, what if we do this? How does that work out for us? We were able to do that with Board. Okay. We can research stuff. All of the Board forecasts are archived for us. We can go back and say, what did you do? What did you forecast last year? And the best thing is that we have both an automated roll-up, but we also can measure forecast accuracy in the system, right? Part of any finance plan that you're going to have is forecast accuracy is important because it drives inventory, which drives your carrying costs, right? How much extra product do you have in your warehouses? Based on your safety stock, it's all based off of that demand plan. If you don't have a good demand plan, your forecast is terrible and you're going to produce inventory of things that you don't need. So that's what Board has enabled us to do. So what was implementation like? 3 months to go live. We did it in 2 phases. Okay, so don't be afraid to think about doing this in stages. You might have a grand plan to do this, and here's what we're going to do for this function and this function and this function. We just went live with sales planning first. And then about 6 months later, we went live with supply chain. Okay, so don't be afraid to take it in smaller bits and pieces. You don't have to do everything at the same time. We were on time, on budget. We used Board PS, as we said. My PS implementor is sitting here in the room. But the relationship with Board really makes a difference, because we actually did a poor job of scoping out our project. And so once we were halfway into the go live, we're like, oh, it'd be really nice to have this. And oh, we want this as well. And oh, can we do this? And the Board team really partnered with us to do that. So whether you're using a Board or a partner, make sure you get someone who's going to help you and be flexible with that implementation. Okay? So what efficiencies? I talked about the time efficiency. We went from 16 hours down to less than an hour of manual work. We have a lot of management reporting. We can do top-line forecasting. Supply chain also has visibility into our data. And it's easy to make system changes. Everything flows through the systems automatically. So if you add a new SKU, you discontinue something, all those things are automated, versus before, they were manual for us. And we were trying to eliminate the manual part of what we're doing. Okay? So what did we learn? The key things, scope, right? Plan out your entire what you want to get done. We kind of talked about the different functions that get involved. Yes, it's sales or demand planning. Yes, it's your supply chain operations. Yes, it's your logistical teams. Plan out each of these phases. You don't have to implement them all at once. You can just take one chunk at a time, but it helps them from an architect standpoint get to where your end goal is. If you have 5 or 6 steps planned out, you can do one at a time. Board is flexible. That's one of the things that we learned about Board that we really kind of thought about during the POC and the initials, but it really has a lot of flexibility. I am not a highly technical user. I'm just not. But you're able to do simple things to change reports to be meaningful for you that you can't do with a lot of other systems. If any of you use things like Cognos, you got to get a specialist in to change one little thing. If you've ever tried to create a report in SAP, it's miserable, okay? But with Board, someone like me who's not an expert can change the reports to get to what I want to see, to get to the level of detail that I want to see, okay? So critical to design features and reports up front. Again, it's user-friendly. The last one is probably the most pleasant surprise that we've seen. Board has an active user community. They want you to continue on your educational journey or whatever you want to call it. They want you to become the experts. They don't want to be there holding your hand the whole way. So they've encouraged us for our internal people to get trained up to learn how to do these things, that the enhancements that we're asking for. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be holding your hand forever. They want you to learn how to do it and to pass that knowledge on within the community. So that's been probably the most pleasant thing about Board so far. So where does it go next? As I said, we only have what we call S&OP, Sales and Operations Planning. We don't have the finance piece. We have multiple expansions that we're toying with. Unfortunately, we're kind of in a no man's land right now because we're looking at an SAP upgrade, and that kind of takes precedence over any of the other operating systems. We would love to add revenue and margin in terms of financial profitability. We'd love to have, we're calling it AI assisted. It's probably closer to machine learning forecasting. And we'd love to import some syndicated data, so anybody who's in the CPG world would understand IRI and Nielsen data. But those are the expansions that we have teed up going forward. And to bring it home, so I would say my advice to you is every journey begins with a first step. Don't be afraid to take that first step. Get out there, figure out what systems are available, what your solution looks like. As the partner said, you don't have to do it all at once, okay? Any questions? I know I blew through that really quickly. Yes?
Yeah, this was awesome, by the way. I always, ever since I started at Board, I thought StarKist was one of our coolest logos in the Americas. No, seriously, it's a great case study as well that we have on the website. I think, like, for me, just as an account exec, I want to start marketing to food product manufacturers, but I want to ask you as a supply chain professional, is there any other layer of complication or challenge that, given the fact that you're dealing with a product that can expire or spoil as opposed to making,
TVs or phones or something like that? There is, but that's something that we have to deal with it before we went with Board, and we have to deal with it after we've gone to Board, and we still have to deal with it.
I was going to say, your supply chain, you mentioned up front, your plan, what was it, 6 weeks out or something like that?
12 weeks.
12 weeks,
So,
okay.
so
that's as opposed to like what industry standard for a non-perishable product would be longer? Is that basically?
actually, 12 weeks is actually pretty standard for most food companies. Okay. I can't speak to, other finished electronics or something like that. But I think 12, well, of the people in the room, is 12 weeks kind of normal? Or short, long?
Longer than daily, probably short for us.
It's short?
Yeah, we're like 12 months. Our
12 months?
Yeah, our product, we make guitars, so our manufacturing process is like 3 months.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it varies. I mean, we have products that are weeks, like fresh chicken is weeks when we talk about that in our restaurants. But some can be, that's a pain that might be frozen or something like that, could be longer.
Right, right.
Our
So,
products
yeah.
have very different lead times if you think about it.
Yeah, so we think of our 12 weeks as probably pretty average in the grand scheme of things. It's certainly not on the short side, but we've heard of many that are longer, so.
Yeah, I just look at this, I want to be hitting every, like hood, like dairy products.
Yes.
I think it would be a really, relevant case study.
Yes. The big thing is get off your Excel spreadsheets. Someone put up the chart earlier that like, hey, and that's from the pre-2000 era. And we've taken so many steps since then that if you're not going to something that's more web-based and current, modern, then you're going to get left behind, honestly.
Do you manage product specifications in there, like standard products for your buyers in terms of like what approved specs they can get or substitutions they might be getting?
So we do that in SAP.
Okay.
So that's not something that we manage through Board. Yet. Thank you. Yet.
Yes, exactly. And what about statistical forecasts? Your forecast at the moment, what they come from what? Something the sales guy, they just key the forecast in.
Correct. So sales guys are keying the forecast in. As I said, we're 12 weeks, so that's T minus 3 months. So for this month, we're looking at what you're going to forecast to sell 3 months in the future. Our forecasting accuracy when we started this journey was probably a little bit below average. We're talking in the 60% range. Gold standard for our industry is about 85%, and we're probably up to about 80% now. So.
Is that just because of the time that you're able to invest, because you guys don't have any sort of
Yes.
leveraging board?
Yes. We have a system that we can use. We have one use by both supply chain and sales, and we have the time to research the anomalies and fix the things before they go to the production team.
Of all your users that you guys, you said you have roughly over 100 or so users. How many are like in-house developers versus power users? Like how much are you guys actually doing it yourself versus outside the house?
We don't have any what I would call power users that are not internal employees. The other ones, the brokers that we're talking about that use the system, they're really just entering data. Yeah. So we have basically 2 power users in house.
Do you have any developers that are like procuring
Nope.
data?
Nope. So yeah, it's all internal.
So you started with spreadsheets as most do. Did you find that you were kind of forcing the solution of like, here's what our spreadsheets do, you have to make board do exactly what it is? Or were you letting board kind of lead?
It was a little bit of both, I'll say. The spec was replace these spreadsheets, but I think that Taylor and the board team were able to say, hey, you should think about doing this and doing this based on their broad experiences.
They mailed us a button that when you press it, it says, sorry, Charlie, because they kept trying to copy and paste Excel so much, and we kept trying to revert them to where they are now. So it is a good mix. So their spreadsheets were really built out and really strong.
They were great spreadsheets.
They were awesome spreadsheets. I was very impressed.
But there's only so far you can go with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So,
Taking the benefits of it and merging it for where they want to go.
yeah.
And I can tell you, we're not supply, we're on gross net, and I can tell you, we did the opposite. We said build this because we thought it was faster to get us up and running, and found it was not. Mirror our spreadsheets, we thought we'd be up and running faster.
But see, that's where I'm going to say leverage the expertise of either the board team or your partner, right? They've done this, maybe not at your company, but they've done this many, many times, and they can tell you what is a better way to do it.
Yes and no. So we were, I think we're the first pharmaceutical company on board, and the financial planning is very different, I can tell you.
Okay,
And
yes,
so that
yes.
was where it was a learning curve, and I can tell you, from experience, not necessarily the best one either, not a board problem, but our thought was we hired an external consultant that had the knowledge base to help build board out. It didn't go as expected.
Right.
But it was a external consultant problem.
But yeah. But again, I'll go back to that's a scoping issue, right? You've got to lay out the foundation of the things that you want to be able to do in terms of from a functionality standpoint, and then the journey may take you not in a straight line, but the journey will eventually get you there. So,
Great stuff.
any other questions? Yes.
In your supply chain planning, did you have to do any catch weight translations? Do you guys transact in catch
Yes,
weight
we do. Yeah, everything's done in metric tons. So, yeah.
versus, you easily translate from demand in metric tons to
Yeah, because I mean, there are standards built in. So this many metric tons will produce this X amount of product. Yeah. So yes, that was one of the technical things that board does for us, right? Once you input all the standards, it'll do all the calculations for you, and then it's based on your weeks of supply or weeks of inventory. So, absolutely. All right.
Wonderful. Well,
Thank
Ted,
you.
Thank you very much indeed.